The book of James is about faith on the street, how the gospel of Christ in heaven destroys everyday evil on earth and offers practical wisdom on how to build life-giving community from the inside out. James takes loving God from theory to reality, from our hearts to our hands and our feet in intensely practical ways like work and money, hypocrisy and authenticity, favoritism and equality, justice and injustice. James teaches our faith to show up in real life. It doesn't get any more real than this. James drives love from our souls to the streets and teaches us how to live in real life. Welcome to James.
Good morning. This is social distancing at its finest, right here. Way to go, front row. Hey, it's good to be here. For those joining online, welcome. Good to have you. I was just scrolling on Facebook to just kind of see who's joining us and who's gathered here and online. And so great to have you with us. We just read the passage, James 3, 1 through 12, and in one word, what is James 3 about? The tongue, or words. Okay, so we have a passage about words, and it's kind of funny. Last week, Adam, when he was teaching, he said, on the surface, at first reading, this passage may seem simple, but it is not. It is very complex. And I kind of chuckled because I knew what I was going to teach this week, and I thought, I can come up here and say that at first glance, this passage seems very simple, and it totally is. It is so simple. It is so straightforward and so good. It's about words, okay? Words impact us. When I was a kid, there were a variety of words that would impact me. It's time to eat. Good words, good words. It's time for bed. I would always tell my parents, I hate sleeping. It's so boring. And I still kind of agree. But now that I'm a parent, there are different kinds of words that have different effects on me. So Sweet D was away in Atlanta this weekend, and I had my 4 girls. And anytime we're doing really anything, our oldest daughter, Hattie, she'll just kind of out of the blue say, Dad, I love you. And I'm like, that feels good. You know, it has an effect on me. Or one of my least favorite words, and this has got to be as a parent like your least favorite, that kind of whiny sort of, but why? It doesn't matter, just do it, right? Like, words have an effect, and actually, words can create in us, like, all sorts of images. I don't know what kind of image comes to your mind when you think about words, but just think, image. I think about honey. Honey, like, words can be so sweet. Like, they can just be like, man, that's just good. Like when my daughter says, I love you. But also, words can be like a bee sting, you know? It can sting, it can hurt. Words are a small thing, they pack a punch. And that's kind of like James. James has a lot of images for the tongue. Like, I'm an image person. So here's what I want you to scroll through the verses that we just read, verses 1 through 12, or really, it starts in verse 3, the images do. Scroll through verses 3 through 12, and I'm going to give you 20 seconds to count the number of images that James uses for the tongue. Ready? Go. Okay, that was 20 seconds. How many did you get? 6? Come on, how many did you get? 8? All right, well, let's count and see what James says. He says, the tongue, it's like a bit that you put in a horse's mouth. And he's like, well, it's kind of like a rudder. And then he's like, well, it's also kind of like a spark. But then after he says it's like a spark, what does he say? It's also kind of like a fire, like a forest fire. But then he's like, well, it's also kind of like an untamed beast, okay? And then he's like, well, it's kind of like deadly poison. But it's like a spring and a fountain. And then he says, well, it's also like a plant, like a tree and a grapevine. So depending on how you want to divide some of these, 8 different images in these verses that he says the tongue is like. So he gives these images, and my question was, what's the point? Why did he use these images? What was he trying to communicate to us? Okay, so I'm going to give you 10 more seconds to talk to the people around you and answer this question. What's the point that he was making by giving these images? Ready, set, go. Okay. All right, some of you guys are looking at me like, why are you making us talk? Why would you make us talk in a sermon on words? This is crazy, I know. Well, what's the point? I think the point is pretty obvious that he makes. The tongue, it's a small thing, but that small thing has big power. It's like in the last service, we were able to kind of dialogue a little bit more in the 8:30 service, and Kelly Hayes, when I asked what's the point, he gave a new image, number 9. He said it's kind of like a nuclear bomb with a small button. That is a small button, and you can press it and cause a massive explosion. It's a small thing. It has big power. Power to do what? What does the tongue have power to do? Well, there's 2 things that James really points out, and I want to read them just so we can kind of get a flavor for it as we talk about it. Let's pick up in verse 5. So also the tongue is a small part of the body, and yet it boasts of great things. That's the point. See how great a forest is set aflame by such a small fire. Okay, we're answering the question. What does it have the power to do? It's a small thing, big power. What does it have the power to do? And the tongue is a fire, the very world of iniquity. The tongue is set among our members as that which defiles the entire body and sets on fire the course of our life and is set on fire by hell. Like, this is just nice and happy. So what's the point? The tongue is a small thing, big power. What does it have power to do? Yeah, you guys said, what does it have the power to do? It has the power to burn, to destroy, to kill. The tongue has power. Anybody ever experienced the power of the tongue to do that? Anybody ever been burned by some words? Anybody ever burned somebody with your words? Yeah, words burn, and I don't really need to convince us of this. Insults burn. Gossip, it just burns. Accusations and blame burns. Making fun of somebody. I like as a youth pastor when we're gathered, it like lights me on fire. It burns me when it seems like somebody's getting burned by getting made fun of. Being overly critical, it burns. Sometimes the words we don't say burn the most. Like not saying, I'm sorry, or I was wrong. Sometimes that burns. Lies burn trust. Lies and deceit. Proverbs 15:4 says, the tongue that brings healing is a tree of life, but a deceitful tongue crushes the spirit. Just sets it on fire. The tongue has the power to burn. We know this, right? Then that's kind of the negative side of the power of the tongue, the deadly poison. It's power to destroy. But there's also an image that we kind of skipped over, that are 2 images that emphasize its power not just to burn, but to do something that is, a little bit different. Let's go to verse 3. Go to verse 3. Now, if we put the bits into the horses' mouths so that they will obey us, we direct their entire body as well. Look at the ships also. Though they are so great and are driven by strong winds, are still directed by a very small rudder, whatever the inclination of the pilot desires. Okay, so he's saying the tongue has the power to do what in those verses? To direct. Yes, give me another word. Steer. Yes, give me another word. Very nice. Daniel, you cheated. You told her, didn't you? It has the power to burn, but if we're going to be a little bit of creative with our words, we're going to say it also has the power to turn. To steer, to direct, to guide, to influence. The tongue has the power to speak into somebody's life and give direction. That is power. Yes? So I have another question. Lots of questions. How has your tongue been this week? How have your words been this week? Have you used them to burn? Have you used them to turn, to speak into somebody's life? If you're like me, then your answer is kind of something like this. Neither. Like, I'm kind of somewhere in the middle. I don't really think that much about what I'm saying. It's like I'm not, like in my life in the past week, I'm not like, can't make a list of all these things that I said that just, we're just spitting fireballs everywhere. But it's also like, wow, I didn't really like, preach a sermon to like somebody, like sit down and like, you know what I mean? Like kind of, can anybody relate to this? Like, I'm just kind of in the middle somewhere. I'm going to assume that you can. And if you go, well, I haven't really used my tongue to like burn anybody, but I haven't used it to like to speak into somebody's life, then I want to propose to you that God has given us something that we are maybe wasting. He's given us something with immense power. Like, think about the button to the nuclear bomb. Given us something with immense power to use that, yes, can be destructive, but given us something with immense power to be used for immense good. And I think if you're like me and you kind of say, well, I just kind of talked. I didn't put that much thought into it. I just talked. To say, hey, if God has given us something with great power, like the button to a bomb, let's use it. Let's not just be kind of casual about it. Like, let's acknowledge it for what it is and capitalize on it, on its power to turn. So I want to think about this whole idea of the turning, words that turn. You think of what kind of words turn, steer, influence, guide, speak into somebody's life. What kind of words? Good job. Yes, those are very specific words. You might say words of encouragement, right? Words of encouragement. I want to, as we think about some words to turn, I want to give some stories. I want to tell you the goal of the stories. The goal of the stories is to put words in real life so that we would go, oh, yes, I know my tongue is a small thing with big power, and to go from there to, I see and really have come to re-believe the power that I have right here. And then that would lead us to go, I'm not going to be passive in my words. I'm going to be intentional in using them. That's the goal of these stories. So, encouragement, words that turn. I remember when I was a senior in high school, I had some sin that had come to light, and my dad knew about it. And we were at a men's retreat. And there was a point in this men's retreat where we were taking the Lord's Supper, and we were like giving the Lord's Supper to each other. And I was like, man, this is weird. I'm like feeding the bread, and I'm like this. But even more than the kind of awkwardness of the way it was doing was just kind of this feeling of going, all I could see was not like the sacrifice of Jesus, not the love of Jesus, but all I could see was like my sin, and I felt like all of it was tainted. Maybe you've been there before. And so then before my dad took the bread and the cup and gave it to me, he looked at me. And you know when you can kind of look at somebody and you say something with your eyes and it's kind of like, yeah, I know. Like, we're on the same page. You know what look I'm talking about? And he just said this. He said, his grace is sufficient. He gave it to me. It's a word of encouragement. Did those words turn me? Yes. What did they turn me towards? They turned me to hope, to the gospel, turned me to grace. Our words have power. Power to do what? Power to turn. Let's use our words to encourage. What other kinds of words turn in a good way? How about peaceful, gentle words? Proverbs 15:5, a gentle answer, do you know what the word is? The next word is? A gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. But that's not the way we like it. If you burn me with your words, what do I want to do to you? Huh? Burn back, but that's not it. What do I want to do? I want to burn you more, worse. You burn me first degree, coming back, and it's coming back, coming back, coming back. And James is like, no. Your words have power. Use them to turn away wrath with a peaceful word. What are the kinds of words turn? Loving words, yeah. Compliments. When I was a senior in high school, a junior, I was taking physics, and we had this new teacher, and he was excited. He was a little bit excited about himself. He thought engineers were the coolest, and he was an engineer, and he put this problem up on the board his first day, and I was like, I don't really know this, and I kind of wrote an answer. I didn't write much, and just kind of turned it in. And I very specifically remember, I'm sitting in my chair, he takes it from me, he looks at the paper, and he looks at me. He looks at the paper, looks at me, and he goes, brilliant but lazy. I love it. And I was like, actually, opposite. Not brilliant, but also not lazy. He had me totally wrong. But what he complimented me, what he affirmed to me, I wanted to prove him right then. And so I would start doing work on a separate sheet of paper so that I could then go to a different piece of paper and write down my work as if I was really lazy about it. Okay, so the compliment, what did it turn me towards? The compliment turned me towards the virtue that was affirmed in me. I think this is true a lot of times. For parents, if you want something to increase in your kid, less speeches and more encouragement, more compliments on a very small scale with my daughters. I think it was yesterday. Like I said, Sweet Dee was away, and we're eating cereal, and they cannot get milk in their mouth. They just spill it everywhere. Like everybody, I'm like, oh my goodness, this is terrible. So Kate, our second oldest, she kind of leaned over her bowl, and I said, Kate, you lean over the bowl so well. And Hattie and Kate and even Rachel, who's just turned 2, they all like, well, Dad, look at me. And they're like all like leaning over. Here's the point. Compliments make people, something about it turns people towards the virtue you affirm in them. One time, Adam Richardson told me that he thinks I have the gift of faith. And that has turned me towards believing that in me. Compliments turn people towards the virtue you affirm in them. Let's use our words. That's power. That's why I came to Sandhurst, because what I wanted to do 3 things when I graduated. Maybe work in the church, maybe teach in the school, maybe do something with missions. And all of the inputs given to me steered me not towards the school. They said I wasn't organized enough for that. And not towards missions. Unanimous input was work in a church. And then post wrong dates for everything that you do. Because if you're a parent in here, you know what I'm talking about. Every time I post a date, I post the wrong one. So sorry. The point is, words have power to turn, to steer, to influence. Some words have power, actually, to set people free. Gospel words have power to set people free. When I was thinking about words, I was like, man, if I don't talk about 3 things, if 3 things aren't coming out of my mouth consistently, I've missed it. Praise, prayer, and proclamation of the gospel. Those three things need to be coming out of my mouth. So I'm thinking about all this morning, and I want to go out to the Cross little area to pray this morning. And I start to walk out, get to the back porch, and there's somebody at the cross. I'm like, man. I'm like, okay, fine, I'll just do it on the porch. So I sit down at the porch, and I open my notes, I open my Bible, I'm reading about words, the power of words to speak into somebody's life. And I'm doing that, and I look at the person at the cross. I'm going to read my Bible. I look at the person at the cross. What do I have right here? The tongue. What does the tongue have? Power. So I went up, and I just sat down. He was on one bench, just sat down on the other. I said, "What's up, man? How are you?" And he goes, "Not so good." And I don't need to tell all the details of the conversation, but it was a good conversation about second chances, and me being able to use my tongue to present a gospel, a good news about a God who's made a way not for second chances, but countless second chances because of Jesus, who's made a way for his righteousness to be attributed to my account. There is power. And I think for us to be kind of neutral about, I don't really think about my words that much, is wasting a gift that God has given us. Encouragement turns people towards hope and purpose. Gentle and peaceful words turn away wrath. Compliments turn people towards the virtue that was affirmed. The gospel turns people to truth that frees. So I just tried to imagine a world in which Christians use their tongue, not just like passively to talk about things, but intentionally. Where marriage is refused to give more criticism than compliments. Like just picturing marriage filled with compliments. Picturing kids, like this one seems almost unbelievable. Kids choosing to express more appreciation for their parents than complaints about their parents. About Christians who use social media to brag on people, not just brag on their last meal. About Christians who use social media to post about what God is doing, to use written words, post about what God is doing and how God is changing them instead of how everyone else is wrong about everything always. Try to imagine a world where Christians never gossiped, ever. One time, after church, Sweet D's walking down the hallway, about to come around the corner, and somebody's talking to Adam, and somebody says something negative about me to Adam. They don't know Sweet D is around the corner. And they just put it up on a tee for Adam to just be like, yeah, Will is this, and this, and that, and that's so frustrating. I'm so sorry that he's like this, and this, and that. And Adam, he took that tee, and all he did was brag on me. Imagine a world like that, where Christians refused to gossip. Thanks, Adam. I think it'd be a pretty cool world. Now, James, in his mind, his exhortation to use our words to turn and not to burn is not just rooted in, well, imagine how cool a world would be where Christians did that. His rationale for saying use words that turn, not burn, is actually something deeper. Go to verse 9 with me. Verse 9 says, "With it we bless our Lord and Father, and with it we curse men who have been made in the likeness of God. From the same mouth come blessing and cursing. My brothers, these things ought not to be this way. Does a fountain send out from the same opening both fresh and bitter water? Can a fig tree, my brothers, produce olives, or a vine produce figs? Nor can salt water produce fresh." What is his point there? I think his point is, hey, when it comes to your words, don't use words that burn, use words that turn, not just because imagine how cool the world would be, but because things don't produce the opposite of what they are. And if you are a Christian and you are a child of God, forgiven and set free from slavery to sin, and the Spirit of God lives in you to do the work of God through you, and you're an instrument of God to help more people find more life in Jesus, and if that is who you are, then it makes no sense for you to say words that burn. It is a mockery of your identity in Jesus when you use words that burn. Not only is it mockery of your identity, it is a mockery of the God who made you who you are. It's inconsistent when we use our words that way. And I think, and so maybe these are some words that you might learn to say that I've gotten better at, knowing that this is an identity issue. Really, all sin is. But if I'm not really one to say words that burn, but I can cut you with my eyes, I can burn you with my eyes, or I can burn you with my tone. And so when I do that to Sweet D, here's what I'm trying to learn to say when I'm apologizing. To say these words. I'm sorry, da-da-da-da. I'm sorry for da-da-da. That was wrong because da-da-da-da. And then these words. That's not who I am. That's not who I want to be. I think that's what James is saying. You've been made a fresh spring. Why is salt coming out? Doesn't make any sense. That's not who I am. That's not who I want to be. I think those would be some good words for us to learn. And I appreciate that James takes it back to the heart because that's what Jesus does with a lot of things, namely the tongue. Jesus says, out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. Out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. So if I can give an image to that, it would be this. What's in your well comes up in your bucket, okay? So that's a phrase maybe you've heard before. So if you pull up your bucket and a bunch of nastiness and trash, insults and sarcasm and cutting remarks and bad tone and all these things are coming out, you can try to, and this is kind of the classic church way, you can try to filter what comes out of the bucket, or you can say, there's something wrong with my spring. There's something wrong with the well. You understand? And so many times, like with students, somebody will cuss, or not cuss, or just say anything. You can't say that in church. In other words, put a filter on it. And I'm just like, no. Well, yes, we need a filter sometimes, but let's elevate what's happening in here from which this speaks instead of just putting a filter in. There's sometimes you're not supposed to say things, especially around certain people and in certain buildings. You feel me? Here's a good question to ask yourself that I've been asking myself a lot with a lot of things. What's behind that? That's the question. What's behind that? So like when I say something or think words about somebody, I go, what's behind that? Why do I think that? Like what's going on in here that would make me make so much judgments about them based on a social media post or a picture or you fill in the blank? What's behind that? What's going on in here that would come out here? What's behind that? Out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. And so I want to encourage us again to, as long as that's true, to prioritize what sort of words we're feeding our heart. Like I kind of thought about if you weren't thinking about a well, but you're thinking more of a cistern. So like a cistern you fill up with water or it just collects rainwater. Spending time here is kind of like giving time each day, if your heart is a cistern, and turning on a faucet of fresh, clean water to come into your well each day. Does that make sense? So that what comes up in my bucket won't be something that just needs to be filtered, but it'll be something that has been the product of the work of God and His Word in my life. So I'm not reading for a feeling, I'm reading for a filling. So I want to end now with a few sort of specific applications for us. Again, this is not like, wow, we learned some things we never knew before. I do want to challenge us to stop some things and to start some things. So, first, when the tongue is burning, I'm going to steal this from a friend of mine in college who said this. He said, when your tongue is on fire, when you're using it to burn, here's what you should do. What do you do? What are you taught to do when you're on fire? Stop, drop, and roll, baby. It has a good ring to it. Stop, drop, and roll. When your tongue is on fire, this is what he said. Stop talking, drop the conversation, and roll on to something else. And I thought, that's good. Literally, when you sense, because for some reason it feels so good, and I'd say, what's behind that? It feels so good to talk about somebody behind somebody's back. It feels so good. What's behind that? Stop talking, drop the conversation, and roll on to something else. And if you're in a conversation like that, I was talking to Adam after the last service, and he said sometimes it feels like a candle is being held up in front of you, and somebody's teed you up to just what do you think about this person? What do you think about this person's decision to not require this or require this? What do you think about that? And it's just you can take out the little hairspray. You ever put hairspray on a candle? It's so fun. You can take out the hairspray, or you can go. Stop talking. Drop the conversation and roll on. You don't have to be rude about it. If you're in a conversation, just bring up something else. Stop talking. Drop the conversation. Roll on to something else. I really liked that. So that's something to stop. Stop gossiping. Never. Just don't do it. It is a gift to me that I actually know this about my wife. I know this about Sweet D. She doesn't talk about me when she gets with her girlfriends or whatever, and I think it's kind of a thing to bash your husbands when you're hanging out with your girls. And I just don't think that's funny. In fact, I think that's kind of messed up. It's a gift to me that I know she doesn't do that, right? Just kidding. She doesn't. And the only time she talks about my issues is when she's really genuinely seeking input from other people. So that's something to stop. Something to start. Use my words to turn, obviously. To turn. To speak into somebody's life. I think we should learn these words. I'm sorry. I was wrong. I think we should learn these words. I'm proud of you. Really proud of you. I'm grateful for fill in the blank. During quarantine, the students started these things, we called them Gratichats. They were group messages where every day, every person in the group would send something that they're grateful for, and we just called them Gratichats. Maybe start a Gratichat. I'm giving ideas right now for what this will look like in real life. Some words we need to learn. I appreciate you because. When I was in college, there was this guy named Adrian Dupre, and he was the chaplain for the Gamecocks football team, and he would come and speak, and he's a big guy, and he would have, and I thought about doing this, I'll put you at ease, we're not, he would have all the married and engaged men stand up, and he'd say, I'm tired of men who won't brag on their wives in public. So he'd have all the guys, and he would have all the guys just shout out for 30 seconds why they love and appreciate their wives. And I was like, I didn't like it in the moment, and I thought about doing it here, but we won't. But hey, we talked about wives not trashing your husbands behind their back. Husbands, let's brag on our wives. Let's brag on our wives. And in that, we can help turn them towards those virtues that we affirm. Can I give you 2 words that might be 2 of the best words that you can get during COVID? Just kind of set the bar kind of high there. These 2 words. If we could learn these words, it'd be awesome. Join me. join me. So in a time where we really need community, you might say, hey, texting a friend, I'm going to the park. Will you join me? Or you might say, hey, you know that weekly memory verse that's highlighted in yellow every week? I kind of want to memorize those. Will you join me? This is I think what discipleship really looks like in real life. These two words, join me. Hey, I realize that, my cistern is filled up by ESPN and Facebook and other things and not much of this. I kind of want to fill my heart with this, spend some time in the morning reading. So I'm going to start trying to read 5 days a week. Will you? You see this? I want to start complimenting my wife over text 2 separate times every day. Do you want to? Yeah. Hey, guy in my Bob group, you want to join me in that, and we'll text each other at the end of the day when we've done it? Prime timers, I think this is a part of an impact that you can have in our group. I think sometimes it can feel like, well, what is a mentor? Mentorship can sound and feel very structured and difficult. But I think prime timers can say, hey, I'm doing this. Will you join me? Send a text. I'm going on a walk. You join me? I'm trying to memorize this. Will you join me? I think those 2 words, if we could learn those 2 words, I think discipleship would actually be a thing that started to happen on a sort of individual level. Join me. Let's use words to turn, to speak into life. And I was just thinking today, we have about 400 people that engage in our services. I just thought, man, how cool would it be if today there's the power, there's the opportunity for 400 turning words to be spoken if all of us did it just once. And if all of us did it once every day for this week, what would that be? Wow. The number of words that could be used to turn. It's just cool. So, really, today, send a text. I appreciate you because thank you for. I see this in you. I think that's pretty cool. Send a text. Or if you really want to be cool, send a letter. Letters, man, there's something about a letter, a handwritten letter. So, stop, drop, and roll when your tongue's on fire. Use your words to turn. Third, continue to ask God to revive your heart so that you just aren't filtering what comes out of your bucket, but purifying what's in your heart. Keep asking the question, what's behind that? And then last, I was thinking, part of what we do in music and in singing is we are declaring words to God about God, but we're also declaring words about God to us, to what? To turn our hearts, to help me believe what sometimes it's hard for me to believe. I heard somebody say, and I don't remember where, but sometimes we sing things because we believe it, sometimes we sing it until we believe it. And that's kind of what we're doing in music a lot of times is we're singing and to ourselves about God to turn our hearts to God. And so we're going to sing a song. We're going to sing, Great is Thy Faithfulness. I just thought, man, what a way to end our time talking about words to direct some of our words to God, to that which will not change, has not changed, cannot change, to a God who's faithful to save sinners, faithful to empower saints, faithful to use words to turn people to truth that sets people free. We've been given a gift. They're called words. Let's use them. And let's stand together and let's sing some praises to God.